Imagine a single decision that could change the fate of nations. A moment when a king, with the power of oil, shook the mightiest superpower on Earth. This isn't history you hear about in textbooks. This is a story of bold action, global impact, and a legacy that still resonates today. This is the untold story of how King Faisal of Saudi Arabia used oil to challenge the United States, and the world felt the shockwaves. To understand the impact of King Faisal's decision, we first need to look at the world in 1973. The United States, by this time, was the most powerful country on Earth. It had a strong economy, a massive military, and influence that stretched across every corner of the globe. But there was one thing the U.S. was deeply dependent on: oil, the lifeblood of its industries, transportation, and military. And where did most of that oil come from? The Middle East, specifically Saudi Arabia, which was home to some of the largest oil reserves in the world. Saudi Arabia, under the leadership of King Faisal, was sitting on a treasure trove of black gold. While the U.S. was busy being the world's superpower, Saudi Arabia was quietly becoming one of the most important players in global energy markets. King Faisal, a leader known for his intelligence and foresight, understood the power of oil. He also knew that his country's vast reserves gave him influence far beyond the desert sands of Saudi Arabia. But this wasn't just about oil for the sake of profit. The 1970s were a tense time in the world. The Cold War was still raging, and the U.S. was caught in a complex web of alliances. One of those alliances with Israel. And that would soon lead to a major conflict that would change everything. In the fall of 1973, the Middle East was on the edge of conflict. The Arab-Israeli war was unfolding, and emotions were running high. King Faisal, a man known for his calm and strategic mind, was deeply concerned. He had been watching the situation closely, and like many others in the Arab world, he was furious with the United States for its unwavering support of Israel. To many in the Arab world, the U.S. seemed to be ignoring the plight of the Palestinian people. It was at this moment, with the war intensifying, that King Faisal made a bold decision that would change the course of history. He realized that Saudi Arabia had something that the U.S. couldn't ignore: oil. Saudi Arabia, along with several other OPEC countries, controlled a vast portion of the world's oil supply. For years, oil had been a commodity traded around the globe. But King Faisal knew it could be used as more than just a business tool. It could be a weapon. Faisal called together his closest advisors, and after careful consideration, he decided to use Saudi Arabia's oil as leverage. He would make a bold statement to the United States and the world. If they continued to support Israel, they would feel the consequences. On October 17, 1973, King Faisal took action. Saudi Arabia, along with other Arab nations, imposed an oil embargo on the United States and its allies. No more oil shipments. The message was clear: as long as the U.S. stood by Israel, the Arab world would withhold its most valuable resource. The effect was immediate, and the world was about to feel the power of King Faisal's decision. At the time, no one could have predicted just how much this action would shake the global economy and challenge the U.S. in ways it had never been challenged before. When King Faisal imposed the oil embargo, he wasn't just targeting the United States. The entire global economy was about to be shaken to its core. Oil wasn't just important for the U.S., it was the lifeblood of industries around the world. And now, one of the world's largest oil producers had cut off its supply. Across Europe and Japan, countries that relied heavily on oil from the Middle East were caught in the crossfire. For them, this wasn't just about politics, it was about survival. Factories slowed down, businesses faced energy shortages, and economies that depended on oil were suddenly facing a crisis. At first, many didn't fully grasp the scale of the crisis, but within weeks, the effects were undeniable. In the United States, gas prices soared, and shortages became a daily reality. People waited in long lines at gas stations, unsure of when or if they'd get fuel for their cars. For the average American, this wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a wake-up call. The U.S., once the dominant force in global politics and economics, was now facing the harsh reality that it was vulnerable. And it wasn't just about gas, it was about the very foundation of the American way of life. Behind closed doors in Washington, the U.S. government scrambled to find a solution. President Richard Nixon and his team were forced to make difficult decisions. They imposed fuel rationing, encouraged energy conservation, and worked tirelessly to find alternative oil sources. Meanwhile, King Faisal's move also forced the rest of the world to rethink its energy strategies. Other oil-producing nations saw an opportunity to flex their own muscles. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, had gained newfound power, and soon, more countries would join the embargo. Saudi Arabia had set a new precedent, and the world was taking notice. King Faisal had succeeded in making his point. The embargo not only shook the US, but also reshaped the global energy landscape. He had shown the world the true power of oil, and in doing so, he had changed history. But King Faisal's reign was cut short. He was assassinated in 1975, just 2 years after the embargo. His legacy, however, lived on, as the 1973's oil embargo remains a defining moment in both the history of Saudi Arabia and the US. King Faisal's actions in 1973 changed the world. His mastery of oil as a tool of geopolitical power made him a hero in the eyes of many in the Arab world, while leaving the United States to reconsider its global influence and energy strategy. What do you think? Was the 1973's oil embargo the turning point in global politics? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.